The house was dark when I arrived. Derek's house, my son's house, stood silent on Maple Street, the porch light flickering like it was trying to tell me something. I'd driven 40 minutes from my apartment in Silver Springs, my arthritic hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles had gone white. 3 weeks. 21 days since I'd heard my son's voice. I used my spare key, the one Derek had given me years ago, back when he trusted me to water his plants when he traveled for work. The door creaked open, and the smell hit me first. Not death, thank God, but neglect. Spoiled milk, unwashed dishes, the staleness of a home abandoned. "Derek?" My voice echoed through the empty living room. "Derek, honey, are you here?" Nothing. That's when I heard it. A small sound from upstairs. Not quite a whimper, not quite a breath. Just something alive in all this silence. My heart was pounding as I climbed those stairs. I'm 72 years old and my doctor says I need to watch my blood pressure, but right then I took those steps 2 at a time. "Derek!" I called again, pushing open his bedroom door. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled. Derek's phone, the one that had been going straight to voicemail for 3 weeks, sat on the nightstand, dead and useless. And then I saw it, a tiny movement under the bed frame. I got down on my knees, ignoring the protest in my joints, and lifted the dust ruffle. Ethan. My 8-year-old grandson was curled in a ball under his father's bed, his eyes wide and empty, staring at nothing. His lips were cracked, his Superman pajamas filthy. When he saw me, his whole body began to shake. "Ethan, sweetheart," I whispered, reaching for him. "It's Grandma. You're safe now." He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at me with those haunted eyes. It took me 20 minutes to coax him out. When I finally got him into my arms, I felt how thin he'd become, how he trembled like a leaf in a storm. I carried him downstairs, 72 years old, and I found strength I didn't know I had, and wrapped him in the Afghan from Derek's couch. "Where's your daddy?" I asked gently, brushing his matted hair from his forehead. Ethan's lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, finally, one whispered word that changed everything. "Mommy." I called 911 right there. The ambulance came, then the police. They took Ethan to Memorial Hospital, where doctors said he was severely dehydrated and malnourished. He'd been alone in that house for at least a week, maybe more, surviving on cereal and tap water until even those ran out. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was what I'd already started to piece together. What they didn't know was that this 72-year-old woman had already been paying attention to the signs they'd all missed. What they didn't know was that I'd been keeping records, making copies, and preparing for the fight of my life. Because I knew who Mommy was, and I knew what she was capable of, 2 months earlier. The morning Derek disappeared started like any other Thursday. I woke at 5:30 a.m., a habit from 50 years of getting up before dawn to pack lunches and make breakfast for my family. Even though it's just me now, since Harold passed 4 years ago, my body refuses to sleep past sunrise. I made my coffee, black with 1 sugar, and sat at my small kitchen table in my apartment at Willowbrook Senior Living. Through my window, I could see the sun rising over the community garden where I grew tomatoes in the summer. It was October, and the garden beds were preparing for winter. My phone buzzed, a message in the WhatsApp group Golden Girls. That's what we call ourselves, me and 3 other women from the complex, Barbara, Rita, and June. We've been friends for 6 years since I first moved here after Harold died. Barbara had sent a meme about coffee being the most important vitamin for people over 60. Rita responded with laughing emojis. June sent a message saying she'd see us for our morning walk at 7 a.m. sharp. I typed back, "Wouldn't miss it. Fresh coffee at my place after?" This was my routine, had been for years. Morning walk with the Golden Girls, coffee and gossip, then whatever the day brought. Usually it was reading, or my volunteer shift at the library, or lunch with Derek when he could make time. My son, Derek Sullivan, 43 years old, sandy hair starting to gray at the temples, with Harold's blue eyes and my stubborn chin. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, made decent money, Around $85,000 a year, he'd told me. Not rich, but comfortable. Or at least, that's what I thought. At 6:45 a.m., I was tying my walking shoes when my phone rang. Derek's name flashed on the screen. Mom. His voice sounded strained, tight. Mom, I need to talk to you about something. What's wrong, honey? A long pause. Can you come over this weekend, Saturday afternoon? Of course. Derek, you sound upset. What's going on? I'll explain when you get here, just don't mention it to anyone, okay? Not yet. The line went dead before I could respond. I stood there in my little apartment holding my phone, feeling that old maternal instinct kick in, the one that knows when something's wrong with your child no matter how old they get. Derek was 43, but he was still my baby, still the little boy who'd scraped his knees learning to ride a bike, who'd cried in my arms when his first girlfriend broke his heart, who'd called me from college at 2 a.m. when he was scared about an exam. Everything okay? June asked when she, Barbara, and Rita met me in the lobby for our walk. Derek called, sounded stressed. Barbara made a sympathetic noise. She was 75, a retired nurse with silver hair she kept in a no-nonsense bob. These kids today, so much pressure. My grandson, Tyler, he's working 2 jobs just to afford rent. We walked our usual route through Greenfield Park, 3 miles around the lake. The morning air was crisp, leaves crunching under our feet. Rita, who was 70 and still did yoga every morning, talked about her daughter's upcoming wedding. June, the baby of our group at 68, shared photos of her new great-granddaughter. But my mind was on Derek, on the strain in his voice. When I got home, I tried calling him back. Straight to voicemail. I tried again at lunch. Voicemail. At 3 p.m., I called his office. His secretary, a pleasant woman named Carol, said he'd called in sick that morning. Is he all right? I asked. I'm not sure, Mrs. Sullivan. He just said he needed a few personal days. Personal days. Derek never took personal days. When he had the flu 2 years ago, he'd still dragged himself to client meetings. I tried his number again. Voicemail. That evening, I called the only other person who might know what was going on. Vanessa. Derek's ex-wife. Vanessa Torres Sullivan. 39 years old, dark hair, sharp features, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She and Derek had divorced 3 years ago, after 8 years of marriage that had started passionate and ended bitter. The custody arrangement gave Derek weekends with Ethan, plus Wednesday evenings. Margaret, Vanessa answered, her voice cool. She'd never called me Mom, not even when they were married. What can I do for you? I'm trying to reach Derek. Have you heard from him? Why would I hear from Derek? We only communicate about Ethan's schedule. I'm worried about him. He sounded upset this morning, and now his phone is going straight to voicemail. Well, I haven't heard anything. A pause. Is he behind on child support? Because if he is, this has nothing to do with child support, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I'm just concerned about my son. I'm sure he's fine. Derek's always been dramatic. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my apartment that evening, watching the news, trying not to worry. Derek was an adult. He was allowed to take a few days off to not answer his phone if he needed space. I was being an overbearing mother. But Harold used to say I had a 6th sense about our kids, and that sense was screaming that something was very, very wrong. Friday came and went. No word from Derek. Saturday morning I drove to his house. The one on Maple Street, a modest 3-bedroom ranch he'd bought 5 years ago. His car was in the driveway, a silver Honda Accord, clean and well-maintained like Derek always kept it. I knocked. No answer. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. Orchestrated narrative continuation maintaining elderly voice and escalating tension. I need to continue building the story. Let me keep going with the narrative, maintaining the elderly narrator's voice and building tension. I used my spare key and let myself in. Derek, honey, it's Mom. The house felt wrong. Not messy, exactly, but disrupted. Derek's laptop was open on the kitchen table, papers scattered around it. His work bag sat by the door, like he'd come home and then, what? I walked through each room, calling his name. Nothing. His bed was made. Derek always made his bed. A habit from his years in ROTC in college. The bathroom showed signs of recent use. Wherever he'd gone, it wasn't planned. I called the police. Officer Rodriguez came out that afternoon, a young man who couldn't have been more than 30. He took notes while I explained. "Ma'am, I understand you're concerned, but your son is an adult. Unless there are signs of foul play. His car is here, his wallet is here." I'd found it on the dresser. "His phone is charging in the kitchen. What adult leaves their phone behind? Maybe he went for a walk to clear his head. Maybe a friend picked him up. Has he been under stress lately?" "I don't know. That's what worries me." Officer Rodriguez was kind but firm. "I'll file a report, but unless there's evidence of a crime, there's not much we can do. Give it 48 hours. Most missing adults turn up on their own." I wanted to scream at him, to shake him and make him understand that mothers know, but instead I thanked him and left. Back at my apartment, I called the Golden Girls WhatsApp group. "Derek's missing," I typed. "Police won't help yet. I'm scared." Barbara called immediately. "What do you need?" "I don't know. Prayer, maybe." "You've got it. But Margaret, listen to me. I've been a nurse for 40 years. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Derek as a little boy. How he used to have nightmares and crawl into bed between Harold and me. How he'd hold my hand when we crossed the street, even when he got too old for it and his friends teased him. How he'd called me the night Ethan was born, crying happy tears. "Mom, I'm a dad. I'm somebody's dad." Where was he now? Where was my son? Sunday morning, I tried his phone again. Voicemail. I called his work friends, his gym, even his dentist. No one had seen him. Monday, I filed another police report. Tuesday, I hired a private investigator, a man named Frank Chen who'd been recommended by June's cousin. He cost $500 a day, money from my savings account, but I didn't care. "Tell me about your son," Frank said in his office, a small space above a tax preparation service. He was about 50, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I told him everything, about Derek's job, his divorce from Vanessa, his relationship with Ethan, about the phone call that Thursday morning and how Derek had sounded stressed. "What about his finances?" Frank asked. "What about them? Sometimes when people disappear, it's money trouble, debt, gambling, affairs. Derek wouldn't—" I stopped. Would he? How well did I really know my adult son's life? "I don't know," I admitted. "I'll need access to his house. Can you let me in?" We went together that afternoon. Frank went through Derek's papers while I made tea in my son's kitchen, feeling like an intruder. This was Derek's private space, his adult life, and here I was pawing through it. "Mrs. Sullivan," Frank called from the study. "You need to see this." He'd spread papers across Derek's desk, bank statements, credit card bills, and at the center a pile of receipts from somewhere called Lucky Dragon Casino. "Your son has a gambling problem," Frank said quietly. "These statements go back 18 months. He's down about $45,000. I felt my knees go weak. I sat heavily in Derek's office chair, staring at the evidence of a life I hadn't known existed. The casino visits, twice a week, sometimes 3 times. The cash advances, the juggling of credit cards. "Why didn't he tell me?" I whispered. "Gambling addiction is like any addiction. Shame, denial, the belief you'll win it back." Frank's voice was gentle. "Mrs. Sullivan, this changes things. If your son owed money to the wrong people—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. That night, I lay awake again, but this time with a different kind of fear. The kind that comes from knowing your child was in pain and you missed it. The kind that asks, what else did I miss? Wednesday morning, a week and a half after Derek's disappearance, I got a call from Frank. "I've been digging into your son's life," he said. "Margaret, when did Derek update his life insurance policy?" "I don't know. Why?" Because 6 months ago, he increased his coverage from $100,000 to $500,000. And the beneficiary isn't you or his son. It's his ex-wife. The world tilted. That can't be right. I have the documents. Vanessa Torres Sullivan is the sole beneficiary on a $500,000 life insurance policy. Policy number AGL 884592, issued by American Guardian Life Insurance. But they're divorced. Why would he? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm also looking into Ms. Torres Sullivan's finances. Something doesn't add up. I sat at my kitchen table after that call, my coffee going cold. The morning walk with the Golden Girls had come and gone. I'd canceled, couldn't face their cheerful conversation while my mind was spinning. $500,000. Vanessa, Derek's gambling debts. I pulled out my old photo albums, the ones I'd kept from when Derek was young. Here he was at 5, missing his front teeth. At 10, holding up a fish he'd caught with Harold. At 16, in his ROTC uniform, so proud and serious. And here was a photo from Derek and Vanessa's wedding. I'd taken it at the reception. Derek looking at his new wife with such love, such hope. And Vanessa, caught in profile, her expression calculating even then. I'd never liked Vanessa. Harold and I had both felt it, though we'd never said it out loud. There was something cold about her, something mercenary. But Derek had been in love, and what could we do? We'd smiled and welcomed her to the family and hoped for the best. The divorce hadn't surprised me. What surprised me was how nasty it had gotten. The fights over custody, over money, over every little thing. Derek had come to my apartment one night, 3 years ago, and broken down crying. She's not the person I married, Mom. Or maybe she is, and I was just too blind to see it. What happened? I'd asked, holding my 40-year-old son like he was 10 again. She said the marriage was a mistake, that I'd held her back, that she deserved better than a mediocre salesman with no ambition. He'd looked up at me with red eyes. She wants everything, Mom. The house, full custody of Ethan, half my retirement. She's punishing me for not being rich enough. They'd settled eventually. Derek kept the house. They split custody of Ethan, and he paid $200 a month in child support. It had seemed fair at the time. But now? Now I was wondering what else Vanessa wanted. My phone rang. Frank again. Margaret, I found something. Vanessa filed for bankruptcy 2 years ago. She's $60,000 in debt. Credit cards, medical bills, a car loan she defaulted on. But she works. She's a dental hygienist. Part-time. She makes maybe $30,000 a year. Not enough to cover her lifestyle. She rents a 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside, $1,800 a month. Drives a BMW that's being repossessed. She's drowning. And a $500,000 life insurance policy would solve all her problems, I said slowly. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I am saying we need to look at this very carefully. Thursday morning, 2 weeks after Derek's disappearance, I did something I'd never done before. I called Vanessa and asked to meet her for coffee. Why? She asked, suspicious. I want to talk about Ethan, about what we're going to tell him if Derek doesn't come back. A pause. Fine. Starbucks on Morrison Avenue, 2 o'clock. I got there early, ordered a black coffee I didn't want, and sat at a corner table. I'd dressed carefully. My good slacks, a cardigan Harold had bought me for our last anniversary together, my pearl earrings. Armor of a kind. Vanessa arrived exactly on time, wearing designer sunglasses and carrying a purse I knew cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She ordered a venti caramel macchiato with extra whip and sat down across from me. So, she said, talk. I looked at my son's ex-wife, really looked at her, the expensive highlights in her dark hair, the fresh manicure, the designer boots, all while drowning in debt? I'm worried about Derek, I said carefully. I'm worried about what might have happened to him. We all are. Are we? Because the police still won't treat this seriously. They say adults have the right to disappear if they want. Vanessa sipped her coffee. Maybe that's exactly what he did. With no phone, no wallet, no car. People snap, Margaret, especially people under financial stress. You know about his debts. Everyone knows. Derek wasn't exactly subtle about his casino habit. She leaned back in her chair. Look, I'm sorry he's missing. I really am. But Derek made his choices. The gambling, the debt, the stress, that's all on him. What about the life insurance policy? For just a second, barely a heartbeat, something flickered in Vanessa's eyes. Surprise? Fear? It was gone before I could identify it. What life insurance policy? The one where you're the beneficiary, $500,000. I don't know what you're talking about. Policy number AGL 884592, issued 6 months ago by American Guardian Life Insurance. Vanessa's hand tightened on her coffee cup. Derek never mentioned any life insurance policy to me. Interesting, because the application requires a beneficiary signature. Your signature is on file. I was bluffing. Frank hadn't told me that. But I watched Vanessa's face, and I knew I'd struck gold. I signed some papers, she said slowly. Derek said it was about Ethan's education fund, that if anything happened to him, Ethan would be taken care of. By giving you $500,000? For Ethan's care, for raising him. You know that's not how life insurance works. That money is yours to do with as you please. Vanessa stood up. I'm done with this conversation. You're a grief-stricken mother looking for someone to blame. I'm not that person. She grabbed her purse. And Margaret, stop calling me. Stop digging into my life. Derek made his own choices, and whatever happened to him is not my fault. She walked out, leaving her half-finished coffee on the table. I sat there, my heart pounding, knowing with absolute certainty that Vanessa knew something, that my son's ex-wife was hiding something terrible. I called Frank from the parking lot. I think she did something to him. Margaret, slow down. What happened? I told him about the coffee meeting, about Vanessa's reaction, about the life insurance policy. It's not enough, Frank said. Suspicion isn't evidence. We need proof. Then get me proof. I'm trying, but Margaret, listen to me. If Vanessa is involved in Derek's disappearance, if she did something to him, then she's dangerous. You need to be careful. She's not going to hurt a 72-year-old woman. You'd be surprised what people do when they're desperate and cornered. That night I got a call from the police, Officer Rodriguez, the young man who'd taken my first report. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm calling about your missing son. We've had a development. My heart stopped. Did you find him? No, ma'am, but we received a tip. An anonymous caller said Derek Sullivan was spotted in Atlantic City 3 days ago at a casino. The caller said he appeared to be fine, just taking some time away. That's impossible. Derek wouldn't... Ma'am, I know this is hard to hear, but we have to follow up on all leads. If your son is voluntarily staying away, he's not. Someone is lying. We're investigating. But if the tip pans out, we may need to close the missing person case. I hung up and immediately called Frank. Atlantic City, he said. No, I've been tracking Derek's credit cards, his debit cards, everything. There's been no activity since the day he disappeared. If he was in Atlantic City, he'd have to be living off cash. Could he have withdrawn cash before he disappeared? His last ATM withdrawal was $80, 3 days before his disappearance. That's not enough to survive on for 2 weeks. Then someone is trying to make it look like Derek ran away. Yeah, Frank said grimly. Someone is covering their tracks. The next morning, Friday, I woke up with a headache and a determination that surprised even me. I'd spent the night thinking about Harold, about how he'd handle this. Harold had been a gentle man, an accountant who believed in rules and order and justice. But when someone hurt his family, he became a quiet, relentless force. Be like Harold, I told my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Don't get mad, get smart. I called the Golden Girls WhatsApp group and asked them to meet me. We gathered in Rita's apartment, which was bigger than mine, and had a better view. I need help, I told them. I need to prove that my son's ex-wife did something to him. Barbara, Rita, and June listened as I laid it all out. The gambling debts, the life insurance policy, Vanessa's financial troubles, the anonymous tip about Atlantic City. "You think she killed him," June said quietly. "I think she did something, I don't know what, but I know Derek wouldn't abandon Ethan. He loves that boy more than anything." "What do you need from us?" Barbara asked. "Information, surveillance, anything. I can't afford to pay Frank forever. My savings will run out in another week." Rita nodded. "I'm in. I'm 70 years old and retired. What else do I have to do?" "Same," June said. "Plus, my daughter's friend works at the courthouse. She can pull records if we need them." Barbara smiled. "I still have friends at the hospital. If Derek was brought in anywhere in the state, I can find out." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you, all of you." "That's what friends are for," Barbara said firmly. "Now let's make a plan." Over the next week, we became a team. Rita followed Vanessa to work, to the grocery store, to Ethan's school. June's daughter's friend pulled court records and found that Vanessa had been sued twice for unpaid debts in the past year. Barbara called every hospital, morgue, and police station in a 3-state radius. And I went through Derek's papers. Every receipt, every bill, every email I could access from his laptop. I made spreadsheets, I organized, I documented. I found Derek's journal buried in his desk drawer. Recent entries broke my heart. October 2nd. Lost $3,000 at Lucky Dragon tonight. I don't know why I keep going back. I don't know how to stop. I'm failing Ethan. I'm failing myself. October 8th. Vanessa called, asked if I'd updated my life insurance policy. Said she was worried about Ethan's future if something happened to me. Made sense at the time. Why does everything she says make sense until later? October 12th. I need help. I need to tell Mom. But how do I tell her I'm a failure? That I'm weak? That I've thrown away everything Dad taught me about responsibility? I wept reading that. My son, my beautiful son, suffering alone. And then, 3 weeks and 2 days after Derek disappeared, everything changed. The police called. They'd found Derek's body. He'd been in the woods near Clearwater Lake, 30 miles from his house. A hiker had spotted him. The initial assessment was that he'd been there for about 3 weeks, since shortly after he disappeared. "How did he die?" I asked, my voice barely working. "We're waiting for the autopsy, but Mrs. Sullivan, I'm so sorry for your loss." I called Frank. They found him. "I know, I just heard from my police contact. Margaret, I'm so sorry." "How did he die?" "They don't know yet, but there's something you need to know. Derek had a head injury, blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Was it murder? They're investigating it as suspicious. The medical examiner will determine cause of death." I sat in my apartment, numb. My son was dead. Derek was gone. That beautiful baby I'd rocked to sleep, that little boy who'd held my hand, that man who'd called me 2 months ago sounding stressed, gone. But even through the grief, through the pain that felt like it was physically crushing my chest, I felt something else. Rage. Because I knew in my bones that Vanessa had done this. The funeral was small. Derek's friends from work, some relatives, the Golden Girls standing beside me, and Vanessa, dressed in black, holding Ethan's hand. Ethan. My grandson looked lost, confused. He'd been told his father was dead, but at 8 years old, how could he understand? I tried to approach them after the service, but Vanessa pulled Ethan away. "Now's not a good time," she said. "He's my grandson." "And he's my son. I'll decide when it's a good time." I watched them leave, Ethan looking back at me with those big eyes so like Derek's. The autopsy results came back 2 days later. Derek had died from blunt force trauma to the head. Time of death: approximately 3 weeks before his body was found, consistent with the day he disappeared. The injury was consistent with being struck by a heavy object. The police ruled it a homicide. "Do you have any leads?" I asked Detective Sandra Chen, who'd been assigned the case. We're investigating. Mrs. Sullivan, I need to ask you some questions about your son's relationship with his ex-wife. I told her everything: the life insurance policy, Vanessa's debts, the anonymous Atlantic City tip that was clearly designed to make Derek look like a runaway. Detective Chen took notes, her expression grim. We're looking at Vanessa Torres Sullivan as a person of interest, she said, but we need evidence. We need to place her at the scene, find the murder weapon, establish opportunity. What about the life insurance policy? That's motive, not evidence. Unfortunately, motive alone isn't enough to convict someone. So she gets away with it? Not if I can help. But you need to be patient. Patient. I'd been patient for 3 weeks while my son was missing. Patient while the police did nothing. Patient while Vanessa walked around free. I was done being patient. That night I called Frank. I need you to keep investigating. Margaret, the police are handling it now, and they're moving too slowly. Vanessa has Ethan. She's already filed the life insurance claim. I saw it in the public records. She's going to take that money and disappear, and my grandson will be raised by a murderer. Silence. Then, what do you want me to do? Find proof. Find something that connects her to Derek's death. That could take months, and I'm expensive. I'll sell my car. I'll cash out my retirement fund. I don't care. My son is dead, Frank. I need justice for him. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, I'll keep digging. And dig he did. Over the next month, Frank became my eyes and ears. He discovered that Vanessa had taken out a loan from a payday lender the week before Derek died, $5,000 at an impossible interest rate. He found records of phone calls between Vanessa and Derek the night he died. 3 calls, each lasting several minutes. She lured him somewhere, Frank said, or arranged to meet him. Can you prove it? Not yet, but I'm working on it. Meanwhile, I was fighting my own battle. Vanessa had cut off all contact with Ethan. My calls went unanswered. When I showed up at his school, she'd already warned the staff not to let me see him. Mrs. Sullivan, the principal said gently, I understand this is difficult, but Ms. Torres Sullivan has sole custody now. As the surviving parent, she has the legal right to determine who sees Ethan. But I'm his grandmother. Without a court order granting you visitation rights, my hands are tied. I'm sorry. I went home and cried for the first time since the funeral. Cried for Derek, for Ethan, for the injustice of it all. The Golden Girls found me that way, sobbing at my kitchen table. I'd given them a spare key weeks ago, and they'd let themselves in. Oh, honey, Barbara said, pulling me into a hug. She's taking him away from me, I wept. She killed my son, and now she's taking my grandson, and there's nothing I can do. Then we fight, Rita said fiercely. We fight for that little boy. And fight we did. June's daughter's friend helped me file for grandparent visitation rights. Barbara's son, a lawyer in the city, agreed to take my case pro bono when he heard what happened. Rita and June started a fundraiser in the senior community to help with expenses. But it took time. Months of court dates, of lawyers arguing, of Vanessa's attorney painting me as an interfering, grief-stricken old woman who couldn't let go. Through it all, I kept gathering evidence. I made copies of everything: Derek's journal, the life insurance policy, Vanessa's debt records, the phone records from the night Derek died. And then, 5 months after Derek's death, Frank called me with news that changed everything. I found the murder weapon. My hands shook as I held the phone. What? Derek was killed with a tire iron. I've been going through traffic camera footage from the night he died. It took months, but I finally found something. Vanessa's car, leaving Derek's neighborhood at 11:47 p.m., and in one frame, just visible in the passenger seat, is a tire iron. Will the police accept this? I'm taking it to Detective Chen today. Margaret, this could be the break we need. The police arrested Vanessa 2 weeks later. They'd found traces of Derek's blood and DNA on a tire iron recovered from a dumpster near Vanessa's apartment. the very tire iron visible in Frank's traffic camera footage. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later. In the meantime, Ethan was placed in foster care while the court decided who would have custody. I visited him 3 times a week, every week. My beautiful grandson, so lost and confused. He'd started talking again thanks to therapy, but he barely spoke to me. "Where's my daddy?" he asked one day, and my heart broke all over again. "Your daddy is in heaven, sweetheart. He loved you so much." "Mommy said he left us, that he didn't want me anymore." I pulled him close. "That's not true. Your daddy loved you more than anything in the world. He would never leave you." Slowly, over those months, Ethan began to heal, and so did I. The trial began on a cold January morning, 9 months after I'd found Ethan under that bed. I sat in the courtroom, the Golden Girls beside me, watching as the prosecution laid out their case. They showed the life insurance policy, Vanessa's debts, the phone records proving she'd called Derek repeatedly the night he died, the traffic camera footage showing her leaving his neighborhood, the tire iron with Derek's DNA. Vanessa's lawyer argued it was all circumstantial, that Vanessa had been at home that night, that she had no reason to kill Derek when she was already receiving child support. But then the prosecution called their final witness, Ethan. My grandson, now 9 years old, walked to the witness stand. He'd been prepared by a child psychologist, and the judge had ruled his testimony admissible. "Ethan," the prosecutor said gently, "do you remember the night your daddy died?" "Yes." "Can you tell us what you remember?" Ethan's voice was small but clear. "I was supposed to stay with Mommy that night, but she got a phone call. She was mad." "What made you think she was mad?" "She was yelling. She said, 'I don't care what you want, Derek. We need to talk now.' Then she told me to go to bed." "And did you?" "I tried, but I heard her leave. I looked out the window and saw her drive away." "What time was this?" "I don't know. Late, after my bedtime." "And when did your mother come back?" "Really late. It was dark. She came into my room and her hands were wet. She washed them in my bathroom sink. I pretended to be asleep." The courtroom was silent. "Ethan, did you see anything else?" "Her shirt had something red on it, and she was crying. I never saw Mommy cry before." The prosecutor showed him a photo. "Is this the shirt?" "Yes, that's the one." The shirt had been found in Vanessa's apartment, hidden in the back of her closet. It had Derek's blood on it. Vanessa's lawyer tried to discredit Ethan, argued that a child's memory couldn't be trusted. But it was too late. The jury saw the evidence. They saw the pattern. They heard my grandson's testimony. And on a Friday afternoon, nearly 10 months after Derek's disappearance, they returned a verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder. Vanessa screamed. She turned to look at me, her face twisted with rage and fear. "This is your fault. You did this. You wouldn't leave it alone." I stood up, looked her in the eye, and said clearly, "I did this for my son. I did this for justice. And I'd do it again." She was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. I was granted full custody of Ethan. That was 2 years ago. Ethan is 11 now, and we live together in a small house I bought with money from Derek's estate. It's not the Willowbrook apartment. Too many memories there. This is a fresh start for both of us. Ethan is healing. He sees a therapist twice a week. He's in the 5th grade and plays soccer on weekends. He still has nightmares sometimes, still wakes up calling for his daddy. On those nights, I hold him and tell him about Derek, the real Derek, the loving father who would have moved heaven and earth for his son. The Golden Girls are still my closest friends. They helped me move, helped me set up Ethan's bedroom, taught me how to navigate homework in the age of iPads and Google Classroom. They're his honorary grandmothers now, spoiling him at every opportunity. I think about Derek every day. I visit his grave every Sunday, bring fresh flowers, and tell him about Ethan's week. I tell him about the soccer goals, the A's on spelling tests, the slow but steady journey toward happiness. I think about that morning I found Ethan under the bed, traumatized and alone. I think about how close Vanessa came to getting away with it. If I'd been less persistent, less stubborn, less willing to fight. But I was 72 years old, and I'd already lost my husband. I wasn't going to lose my grandson, too. People sometimes ask me if I've forgiven Vanessa, if I can find it in my heart to show mercy to the woman who killed my son. And I tell them, no, I haven't forgiven her, and I don't think I ever will. She took Derek from me. She traumatized Ethan. She tried to profit from murder. Some might say that's unkind, that forgiveness would set me free. But I am free. I'm free to raise my grandson, to give him the love and stability he deserves, to watch him grow into the man his father wanted him to be. That's my justice. That's my peace. Would you have forgiven her? Or would you have stood your ground like I did? Sometimes I wonder if younger people understand what it's like to lose a child, to fight for your grandchild's future, to refuse to be silenced simply because you're old. We're not invisible. We're not powerless. And when it comes to protecting our families, we're absolutely relentless. Because that's what mothers do. We fight for our children even after they're gone. We fight for the legacy they left behind. And we never, ever give up.